right, so at the very beginning, we talked about the product property of radicals. So we had the square root of AB is equal to the square root of A times the square root of B when A and B are greater than or equal to 0. Now we're also going to add in the quotient property of radicals. So this is very similar. It's just when you have the root of A divided by B, that's equal to the root of A divided by the root of B. And again, where A needs to be greater than or equal to 0 and B greater than 0, because you can't divide by 0, so we don't want to have a 0 in the denominator. Okay, so let's do some examples of multiplying. So when we're multiplying, you can multiply things under the roots, like in our product property. So for number 9, we have 2 times 5 times root 5 times root 10. So what we can do is we know that root 5 times root 10 is the same as the square root of 5 times 10. Now 5 times 10 is 50, and then we need to check and see if we can break this down at all. So 50 we know is 5 times 10, right? That's what we did to get here. 10 breaks down to 5 times 2, and that's as far as we'll get. So we have a group of 2 5s, and we have 1 2 left over. So that means we already have this 2 on the outside, right? So we have a 2 times 5 from our group of 5s, and then under the square root we still have this 2. And then 2 times 5 is 10, so we get 10 root 2. And that is the answer for that one. All right, let's look at another. So for number 10, we have the cubed root of negative 4 times the cubed root of 2 minus the cubed root of 16. So just like with anything else, we need to distribute. So we're doing the cubed root of negative 4 times the cubed root of 2 minus the cubed root of negative 4 times the cubed root of 16. So if we multiply those together, we have negative 4 times 2 and negative 4 times 16. So negative 4 times 2 will be negative 8. And negative 4 times 16, that's going to be negative 64. And now we just need to try and break these down. So another thing we can do with cubed roots is if they're negative and you don't want to try and find negative factors, you can always say that if we pull a negative 1 out from our 8, negative 1 you can break into negative 1 times 1, and 1 is negative 1 times negative 1, and that's a group of 3 negatives. So you can always, if you get a negative 1, just pull that out as a negative. So our 8, we're going to kind of go to the side here. 8 will break into 4 and 2, and then 4 to 2 and 2. So we have a group of 3 2s, and then our negative. So our cubed root of negative 8 is going to turn into negative 2. Now we need to break down our cubed root of negative 64. So again, I'm going to pull out negative 1 and 64. 64 breaks down to 4 times 16. 16 is 4 times 4. And then 4 is 2 times 2, 2 times 2, 2 times 2. So now we have 2 groups of 3 2s. So that means we're going to pull out 2 2s. Then we also have this negative 1. So we're going to pull out a negative. So we have negative 2 minus 2 times 2 is going to be 4. So that's negative 2 plus 4, which is 2. And that's our answer for number 10. Okay, let's look at 11. So this one is using the quotient property, right? So we know that this is equal to the square root of 12x divided by the square root of 16y squared. So we're just going to do these separately. So the square root of 12x, let's see if we can break that down at all. Well, 12, we could say that's 3 times 4. 4 is 2 times 2. So we have a group of 2's that we can pull out, and that 3 is going to stay under the root. And then x, we can't break down, right? It's just 1x, so that's going to stay under the root as well. Now let's look at root 16y squared. So 16, we know, is 4 times 4. And 4's will break down to 2 times 2. So we have two groups of 2. And then y squared is y times y. So we can pull out a y. So that's going to give us 4y. So now if we go back up here, our root 12x is 2 root 3x. And on the bottom we have 4y. And then we can cancel out 2 divided by 4 is 1/2. So we're going to have just the root 3x on top divided by 2y. And that's the answer for 11. Okay, and last one, we have 2 root 5 minus 4 squared. So remember, whenever you're squaring something that has a minus or plus, we can't just distribute the squared. We have to do the whole thing, just multiply it by itself, and distribute everything. So everything in the first is going to be distributed to everything in the second. So first 2 times root 5 times 2 root 5. So let's just write out everything. 2 root 5 times 2 root 5. And we're going to have 2 root 5 times negative 4. So that's going to be minus 4 times 2 root 5. And again, minus 4 times 2 root 5. And then our last step, negative 4 times negative 4, will be plus 16. So 2 root 5 times 2 root 5, well, 2 times 2 is going to give us 4. Root 5 times root 5, what is a square root of 5 times the square root of 5? Well, that's just the square root of 5 times 5, which again is 5 squared. So that's going to cancel out, and it's just 5. So we have 4 times 5. Anytime you do a square root times the same square root with the same numbers underneath, the roots are just going to cancel because you're going to get that thing squared. Okay, and then we have 4 times 2 is 8 root 5. Again, 4 times 2, 8 root 5 plus 16. Now 4 times 5 is 20. And then we have negative 8 root 5 minus 8 root 5 plus 16. So now we're going to combine like terms. So first we have 20 and 16, right? Those are like terms. So if we add those together, we'll get 36. Negative 8 root 5 minus 8 root 5 are like terms. So we're going to have minus 16 root 5. And that's our answer for number 12.